For 70 years, the script was simple. The American president demands something, the Canadian prime minister complains, stalls, maybe asks for a polite favor, and then eventually they fold. They always fold because they have to. Because when you sleep next to an elephant, you don't poke it. You just hope it doesn't roll over. But yesterday, the elephant rolled over. Donald Trump tried to corner Canada. He put a gun to the head of the Canadian economy. He demanded total submission on trade, on energy, on the border. He thought it was over before it started, but then something impossible happened. Mark Carney didn't blink. He didn't shout. He didn't go on social media and type in all caps. He simply refused. And that silence, that refusal, it is currently deafening inside the White House. We are watching a shift in the global order happening in real time. You are watching the moment the United States realized that bullying only works if the other guy is scared. And right now, Canada isn't scared. Canada is calculating. In the next 40 minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened in the last 24 hours. I'm going to show you the receipts, the leaked documents, the trade numbers, and the panic spreading through American supply chains right now. Because while Trump is busy making noise, Carney is busy making history. And if you think this is just about milk or lumber or steel, you are missing the bigger picture. This is about who really holds the power in North America. And for the first time in a century, it might not be the guy in the Oval Office. Buckle up. The rules just changed. Let's strip away the noise and look at the raw timeline. Because if you just watch the mainstream news, you're hearing about tensions. You're hearing about discussions. No, this isn't a discussion. This is a collision. 3 days ago, the Trump White House sent a memorandum of understanding to Ottawa. That's diplomatic speak for a list of demands. But these weren't normal demands. This wasn't about adjusting the price of dairy or checking passports faster. This was a surrender document. Sources inside Washington say the demands included a total rewrite of the USMCA energy clause, giving the U.S. unrestricted access to Canadian hydropower and oil at below market rates. It demanded Canada abandon its digital services tax immediately. And the kicker, it demanded Canada align its foreign policy on China 100% with Washington's whims. The threat attached to this document was blunt. If Canada didn't sign within 48 hours, Trump would slap a universal 25% tariff on every single item crossing the northern border: cars, oil, food, everything. Now, usually this is the part where the Canadian Prime Minister flies to DC, shakes hands, smiles for the cameras, and gives up a little bit of sovereignty to keep the peace. That's the playbook. But Mark Carney burned the playbook. Yesterday afternoon, instead of flying to Washington, Carney held a press conference in Ottawa. He didn't look rattled. He didn't look angry. He looked like a central banker looking at a bad spreadsheet. He stepped up to the podium and he didn't even address Trump by name. He simply said that Canada would not be signing the memorandum. He said that Canada's resources belong to Canadians. And then he dropped the bomb. He announced that if the U.S. applies tariffs, Canada will not just retaliate. Canada will immediately trigger Clause 14. We'll get to what Clause 14 is in a minute and why it made Wall Street traders spit out their coffee. But you need to understand the mood in the room. This wasn't political theater. This was a leader telling a bully, go ahead, try it. The reaction from Trump was instant. He went to his social media platform. He called Carney weak. He called him globalist scum. He threatened to build a wall on the northern border. He screamed about ungrateful neighbors. But here's the thing about screaming. It only works if people are listening. And while Trump was screaming, Carney was working the phones with the European Union. He was talking to Mexico. He was talking to state governors in Michigan and New York who are terrified of losing Canadian trade. What happened yesterday wasn't just a rejection of a trade deal. It was a rejection of the idea that the United States owns Canada. It was a declaration of independence in the modern economic age. And the scariest part for Trump, he doesn't know what to do next. He has a hammer, he sees a nail, but the nail just got up and walked away. You might be thinking, okay, politicians say tough things all the time. What makes this real? I'm glad you asked, because we have the receipts. We have the data that proves this isn't just talk. This is economic warfare, and Canada brought better weapons. Let's look at receipt number one, the energy grid. The You often hear Trump talk about energy dominance. Yet he loves that phrase, drills, oil, gas. He thinks America is an island. But look at this map. New York City, Boston, the entire Northeast corridor. Do you know where a massive chunk of their electricity comes from? It comes from Hydro-Quebec. It comes from the north. When Carney refused those demands, he wasn't just protecting Canadian pride. He was protecting the switch that keeps the lights on Broadway. The leaked memo implies Trump wanted to lock in low rates for that power. Carney said no. The receipt, look at the energy futures market this morning. The price of electricity futures in the Northeast spiked 14% in 2 hours. Why? Because the market knows the truth. If Trump starts a trade war, Canada doesn't have to fire a missile. They just have to do maintenance on a transmission line. They just have to review export capacity, and suddenly, New York goes dark. Receipt number 2, the auto sector panic. The American auto industry is not American. It is North American. A single car part crosses the US-Canada border up to 7 times before the car is finished. It's a woven knot. You can't cut it without bleeding to death. When Trump threatened that 25% tariff, he thought he was hurting Canada. But look at this letter from the governor of Michigan. It leaked last night. It's addressed to the White House. It doesn't say, "Good job, Mr. President." It says, quote, "If you proceed with these tariffs, 3 major assembly plants in my state will shut down within 4 days. 4 days. That is the timeline. That is the receipt." Carney knows this. He knows that Trump's base, the blue-collar workers in the Midwest, are the ones who will lose their jobs first if this supply chain breaks. Carney isn't holding a gun to Canada's head. He's pointing out that Trump is holding a gun to his own foot. Receipt number 3, the Clause 14 mystery. I mentioned Clause 14 earlier. Everyone is Googling it today. It's a specific, obscure provision in the trade agreement regarding non-market economies and strategic resource allocation. Essentially, it allows a country to pivot its critical mineral exports to other allies if national security is threatened. Carney didn't just say no. He signaled that Canada sits on some of the largest reserves of lithium, cobalt, and uranium in the world. The stuff you need for missiles, for EVs, for the future. By invoking this clause, he is legally preparing to sell those assets to Europe and Japan instead of the United States. That is the ultimate receipt. He is telling the Pentagon, you want to play games? Fine. We'll sell the batteries for your tanks to Germany. This isn't a bluff. You can see the mining stocks reacting. Canadian mining firms with contracts in Europe jumped 8% this morning. The market believes Carney. They don't believe Trump. And finally, receipt number 4, the silence of the allies. Notice who is not supporting Trump right now. The UK isn't saying a word. France is quiet. Germany is quiet. Usually allies rush to calm things down, but they are watching, they are waiting. They know that if Carney pulls this off, it breaks the spell. It proves that you can stand up to the bully and survive. The world is watching the receipts pile up on Trump's desk. And for the first time, the bill is too high for him to pay. To understand why this is happening, you have to understand Donald Trump's psychology. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it as a strategic analysis. Trump operates on a theory of maximum pressure. He believes that if you make the threat big enough, loud enough, and scary enough, the other side will always crumble. It worked on real estate contractors in the 80s. It worked on some weak Republican senators. It worked on countries that had no other options. But here is why he is losing control of this situation. He is predictable. Carney knows exactly what Trump is going to do before he does it. It's like playing chess against a guy who only knows how to move the queen. It's aggressive, sure, but once you trap the queen, the game is over. Trump is losing control because his leverage is fake. He thinks the US economy is the only game in town. 10 years ago, maybe he was right. But today, Canada has free trade agreements with the European Union. Canada has the CPTP deal with Asia. Canada is the only G7 nation with free trade access to every other G7 nation. Carney has spent his entire career building these bridges. He didn't build them for fun. He built them for this exact moment. Trump is shouting into a megaphone thinking he's terrifying the Canadians. But the Canadians are just putting on noise-canceling headphones and turning toward Brussels, turning toward Tokyo. And you can see the panic setting in at the White House. Look at the tweets. They are getting more erratic. First it was tariffs. Then it was closing the border. Then it was sanctions. When a leader changes the threat 3 times in 6 hours, that is not strength. That is flailing. That is a man realizing that the steering wheel isn't connected to the tires anymore. He is also losing control of his own party. Senators from border states are freaking out. Their phones are ringing off the hook from farmers who sell corn to Canada, from businesses that need Canadian lumber. They are telling Trump, stop, you are going to kill us. Trump hates being told to stop. He hates being told he's wrong. So he doubles down. He screams louder. But the louder he gets, the more isolated he looks. He is trying to use fear, but fear is a currency. And right now, thanks to inflation, thanks to chaos, the value of Trump's fear is crashing. People aren't scared of his tweets anymore. They are just exhausted by them, and Carney is betting on that exhaustion. He is betting that the American people and the American business class are tired of the chaos. He is betting that if he stands still, Trump will tire himself out. It's the strategy of the matador. You don't fight the bull, you let the bull run past you. And right now, Trump is charging full speed at a red flag, not realizing there is a cliff right behind it. Let's talk about Mark Carney. This channel isn't about worshiping politicians. Politicians are employees. They work for us. But you have to respect the skill set when you see it. Previous Canadian prime ministers tried to be Trump's friend. They tried to charm him. They tried to be the nice neighbor. Justin Trudeau tried to play nice, then tried to play cool. It worked for a bit until it didn't. Carney is doing something completely different. He isn't playing politics. He is playing economics. Mark Carney is the former governor of the Bank of England. He is the former governor of the Bank of Canada. He understands the global financial plumbing better than almost anyone on earth. He knows where the money flows. He knows where the bodies are buried in the bond markets. When he looks at Trump, he doesn't see a monster. He sees a distress asset. He sees a volatility risk. His move is different because it is systemic. He isn't just rejecting a trade deal. He is activating a network. Notice his language. He doesn't use words like insult or unfair. He uses words like stability, certainty, rule of law. Why? Because those are the words that Wall Street loves. Those are the words that CEOs love. By framing himself as the adult in the room, he is making Trump look like the risk. He is effectively saying to the world's investors, if you put your money in America, it might get wiped out by a tweet at 3 a.m. If you put your money in Canada, it is safe. We follow the rules. He is weaponizing boredom. He is making Canada the safe haven in a world set on fire by Trump. This is a long game strategy. Trump thinks in 24-hour news cycles. Carney thinks in 10-year bond yields. And the genius of this move, it's quiet. It doesn't require rallies. It doesn't require red hats. It just requires competence. He is building a coalition of the willing. He's signaling to Europe, we are with you. He's signaling to the American governors, we are your friends. Your president is the problem. It is a wedge strategy. He is driving a wedge between Donald Trump and the United States of America. He is betting that America is bigger than one man. And he is betting that Canada can survive the turbulence long enough for Trump to crash. It is risky, incredibly risky. If Trump actually goes through with the 25% tariffs, Canada will hurt, prices will go up in Toronto and Vancouver, people will suffer. Carney knows this, but he also knows that submission is worse. He knows that if he gives in now, Trump will just come back for more next month. He has decided that the cost of fighting is high, but the cost of surrendering is infinite. That is leadership. That is the difference. So why should you care? Maybe you live in Ohio, maybe you live in Texas, maybe you live in Alberta or London. Why does this standoff matter to your life? Because this isn't just a trade dispute, this is the end of the post-wipe arrangement. For 80 years, the deal was the US runs the show and everyone else gets rich by tagging along. That deal is dead. Trump killed it and Carney is burying it. If this rupture continues, here's what happens to you. First, prices. If that border thickens, if those tariffs hit, your grocery bill changes overnight. Not by a few cents, by dollars. Fresh produce in the winter that comes through supply chains that cross borders, cars, appliances, building materials. Inflation was already hurting you. This would turn inflation into a crisis. Second, jobs. We are talking about millions of jobs on both sides of the border that depend on the smooth flow of goods. If you work in manufacturing, logistics, retail, you are on the front lines of this war. But the biggest implication is about trust. For decades, Canada was the boring neighbor, the reliable friend. If the U.S. loses Canada, it is truly alone. Imagine a world where the United States has to negotiate with Canada like it's a hostile power. Imagine needing a visa to go to Montreal. Imagine Canadian oil being sold to China instead of Texas refineries. That makes America weaker. It makes America poorer. And it makes the world more dangerous. Carney's refusal is a mirror. He is holding it up to America and saying, look at what you've become. Is this what you want? If you are an American watching this, you need to understand that your president is gambling with your economic security to score political points. He is treating your closest ally like an enemy, and he is driving them into the arms of your rivals. And if you are Canadian, this is your moment of truth. This is the moment where you find out if your country is a sovereign nation or just a vassal state. Carney has placed the bet. Now you have to live with the spin of the wheel. This changes the map. Literally, we are looking at a North America that is divided, suspicious, and armoring up. The undefended border, the longest peaceful border in the world, that concept is dying right in front of us. And once it's gone, you can't just vote it back into existence. There was a moment yesterday that captured everything. It wasn't the speech. It wasn't the tweet. It was a photo taken at the Peace Bridge between Buffalo and Fort Erie. The driver is American. The gate is Canadian. And for the first time in his career, the gate was down just for a routine check, they said. But the line of trucks behind him stretched for 3 miles. That image is the future. If this doesn't get fixed, that driver is you, stuck, waiting, paying the price for an ego battle in Washington. So what happens next? Let's play out the scenarios. Scenario A, the Trump fold. This is the most likely, though he will never call it a fold. Trump sees the stock market crashing. He sees his donors screaming. He announces a great victory, claims Canada agreed to some minor concession that they actually agreed to 3 years ago, and he drops the tariff threat. He declares mission accomplished and moves on. Carney stays silent, nods, and keeps preparing for the next round. Scenario B, the escalation. Trump's ego takes over. He imposes the tariffs. 25% Canada retaliates immediately. The border grinds to a halt. The U.S. economy enters a recession within 90 days. Inflation spikes. The Republicans panic and try to rein him in, but the damage is done. This is the scorched earth scenario. Scenario C, the breakaway. This is the most interesting one. The tariffs stay, but they are smaller. Canada accelerates its pivot to Europe and Asia. Over the next 5 years, the North American economy decouples. The U.S. becomes more isolated, and Canada becomes a transatlantic power closer to London and Berlin than to Washington, a permanent drift. Carney is preparing for scenario C. He hopes for scenario A, but he is ready for scenario B. This is the part where leaders usually calm it down, but Trump doesn't do calm, and Carney doesn't do submission. So we are stuck in the cab of that truck watching the snowfall, waiting to see if the gate opens. The world is shifting. The old maps don't work anymore. Donald Trump thought he could bully reality. He thought he could force Canada to bend the knee just by raising his voice. But Mark Carney just reminded him of a very old, very simple rule of politics. You are only as powerful as your options. And right now, Canada has options. America is running out of them. This isn't just a story about trade. It's a story about dignity. It's a story about what happens when you push a friend too far. Carney didn't raise his voice. He raised the cost of ignoring Canada. And now Trump has to decide, does he want a trade war he might lose or a peace he can't brag about? I want to know what you think. Is Carney playing a genius hand, or is he poking a bear that will maul the Canadian economy? Is Trump strong, or is he being exposed as weak? This is history. Don't just watch it, understand it. Drop your take in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want to know what happens when the markets open on Monday, if you want the update before the mainstream news even understands the headline, make sure you are subscribed. Turn on the notifications because the gate is down and we are just waiting for the crash.